If you were coming of age in the 1980s, the Brat Pack was near the center of your cultural awareness. But for those of us experiencing it from the inside, the Brat Pack was something very different.
That's a look at Andrew McCarthy's new documentary, Brats, that takes a deep dive into the cheeky nickname Brat Pack that had a seismic effect on a group of young 80s actors that included Rob Lowe, Molly Ringwald, Emilio Estevez, Demi Moore, just to name a few. And Andrew joins us now here on the morning show. Welcome to TMS, Andrew.
Nice to be with you.
So let's get right to it and talk about that Brat Pack handle, because not everyone was crazy about it.
No, back in the day when it first was leveled, it felt like that, like something had been leveled against us. It originally came out because of a magazine article, and it was a really kind of negative, nasty, kind of pejorative term originally. I think it was at the height of that kind of 80s snarky journalism thing. And so, yeah, we really recoiled against it and didn't like it. I mean, who wants to be called a brat and who wants to be lumped in a pack, you know? But the public, of course, always knew better and thought it was this wonderful term, and like we represented them, and so they saw it always as this positive thing, which we didn't. So we had this sort of strange disconnect about how we experienced it and how they experienced it.
Mm-hmm. And Andrew, people might be surprised to learn that most of the Brat Pack didn't really hang out at the time or keep in touch long after. So what was it like to reconnect with some of your fellow actors like Demi Moore and Emilio Estevez?
Yeah, I hadn't spoken to the gang in probably 30-odd years, which seems kind of crazy because, like you allude to, everybody thought, oh, you guys are buddies because we represented this thing in people's lives together. But yeah, I hadn't seen anybody in all those years. So it was kind of the biggest revelation for me when going back and making the film was how much affection we all had for each other, because back in the day, that wasn't necessarily the case. You know, we were young and sort of scared and competitive, and like now we're old and we just kind of realize, oh, you know what? That was a wondrous, amazing time, and that we got to represent this generation. You know, we're the avatars of their youth in a certain way is kind of an extraordinary blessing. And one of the reasons I made the movie is to sort of how do we view our past and reevaluate our past, because it's something I hated so much back in the day has evolved into this kind of beautiful thing. I think that was a really interesting journey, and I'm not sure how it happened. So I wanted to go connect with everybody else and see what their experiences of it was.
And isn't it funny, so many years later, 40 years later, you all, I think, look at it differently now.
Oh, entirely different. I mean, I'm looking at the complete other end of the telescope. You know, I mean, I do, like we said, view it as this kind of amazing blessing that I get to be, you know, the avatar of your youth, you know, in a certain way. And that's kind of a cool thing, you know, and early on, it certainly didn't feel that way, you know. Mm-hmm. But, you know, like I said, the public was right. We were wrong.
Yeah. What was it like, Andrew, reconnecting with Emilio Estevez in particular, who said, you know, he wanted to get together to, quote, clear the air, and he has famously really never spoken about the Brat Pack before.
Yeah, Emilio never talked. He was the one that surprised me the most when he agreed to talk to me. When he agreed, he said, yeah, come on out. I thought, oh, I might have a movie here, you know, so that was an amazing experience, because I don't think I'd seen Emilio since the premiere night of St. Elmo's Fire, whatever that was in the 80s. And we were, you know, supposed to do a movie project together, and then the Brat Pack thing came out, and suddenly he didn't want to do it if I was doing it, and so there was all this kind of, there was no bad blood with me, but I mean, we had a history that got kind of tainted because of it got caught up in the wake of the Brat Pack, you know, and to sort of finally get together and sort of, I don't know if the air had to be cleared, but to just sort of acknowledge our past together, you know, it's always liberating when you go back and sort of can clear the air on certain things and talk about things that you maybe couldn't talk about back when. That's one of the things about this film. I like to think everybody has their own experience of this. I can make a movie about the Brat Pack, and some people go see it because it was this popular thing, but everyone has these events in their lives that we experienced one way with people, and then over time we've come to view them in an entirely different way. And I think the journey of life to get to that's what really was of interest to me.
Well, Andrew, speaking of clearing the air, you actually connect with the writer who birthed the term.
Yeah, that was really fascinating because I'd never met this guy who changed my life, and that was really interesting to sit down. And when I first called David Blum to say, would you, talk to me for this movie? He said, what's your agenda? And I said, dude, my agenda is only to find out what your experience of it was, because I knew it changed his life and his career as much as ours did. It precedes him into every room that he walks into professionally, just like it does ours. And so I thought it'd be interesting to get his take on what he felt about it at the time, again, and what he feels like about it now. So
the power of words.
and I was really surprised to find out how much affection I had for him, which I never would have anticipated. And I thought that was I like that.
Just finally, I mean, we just saw Demi at Cannes premiere her brand new film, The Substance. Rob Lowe, Molly Ringwald. They've had a number of projects over the years, as have you, Andrew, as well, doing a lot behind the camera now, directing. Would you say 40 years down the road, the term Brat Pack, is it kind of worn now with more of a sense of pride, maybe?
Absolutely. Well put. I mean, we've all hung around long enough that we're still kicking. So, and I think, I think it's a fantastic. I think in the movie, Rob says it'll follow us to the end, and it should. And I agree with that.
Andrew, thank you so much for the time.
Thank you. Nice to see you again.